Okay, folks, welcome back for some more sociology here. We're going to be focusing on the economy in this video, and let's just jump right into it. We have talked about the organization of society in terms of social institutions, groups and organizations, and individuals. Of course, without individuals, we don't have all of that, right? In this video, we're going to focus on one specific part of the social institutions, and that is going to be this one right here. I don't think I can draw a line now. Oh, didn't mean to do that. Let me go back. It's this one right here, the economy and work. Okay, and its impact on not only organizations and groups, but individuals, but also how it impacts social institutions this way. I always like to talk about this with students and get you to think about something that we've covered socialization early in the semester, and we talk about the importance of primary groups, in particular the importance of family. So it's hard to argue that the family is not the most important social institution regarding the development of humans. Okay, family is a really important part of that. However, in modern civilization, something to think about. Perhaps the economy is the most important social institution as it relates to the functioning of society. Now, families are a really important part of bridging that individual into society at large. But the economy is what makes the world go around. Okay? So, having said that, let's move on. Let's go forward and look at a few things. We're going to, even look back in the chapter on culture as we thought about sociocultural evolution. And where does the economy appear in the course of human history? The economy as we know it today doesn't really start to appear until around the agricultural societies. And so, what did the economy look like here, and how did we get from here to here? And then, how do we get to where we are now? So, one thing I like to do in talking about the economy is to look at one specific part of the economy, and that's money. But before we get there, let's talk about what we're looking at. What do we mean when we're talking about the economy? So, again, it's a social institution that organizes a society's production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services. So here we go. We've got production, consumption, and production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services. So we're going to isolate the economy and we're going to call that a commodity chain. So think about the modern economy as a collection of commodity chains. Okay. Whether it's oranges, Big Mac, chicken nuggets, burritos, whatever. Anything that you can buy goes through a system of production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services. So I'm introducing this now. When we get to the chapter on global stratification, we're going to look at something that kind of makes this a little bit more complicated. This is a very basic definition, a basic diagram of a commodity chain. Okay, just introducing this now, and may get more complex a little bit later. So the next part of the economy we're going to look at is economic activity. What kinds of things do people do? And what we've done in social sciences, when you study economics, one of the things that we do is we try to get a handle on what we're looking at, and we try to develop ways of studying the economy, and we group economic activity primarily in three different sectors. The first is the primary sector, and what type of work occurs in that sector? Agricultural work, raw materials, working with the earth, extraction of natural resources. Okay. Now that extends back to the agricultural revolution. The first time we saw that type of economic activity. All right. The next sector we're going to look at is the secondary sector, and you can see that this is tied to the Industrial Revolution. Blue collar work, industrial, construction, manufacturing. Okay. And so now we're going to look at the tertiary sector, and this is more applicable to post industrial society, information age. And this is people working with people, service oriented occupations. Now, these can be doctors, lawyers, it could be people working retail at Walmart or Target or wherever, people working with people. Now, important point to note here. Let's not assume that if you work in the tertiary sector or the primary sector, let me let me fix something about this. I just noticed this is a little bit cut off. Let me see if I can get everything included here. I think we got it right there, maybe. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah. So there's raw materials. You can see that now. Sorry about that. So backing up, let's be careful to say that if you're working in one sector that you make more money than another sector. It's kind of easy to do that. You see primary, secondary, and tertiary. But that's not exactly how this works. Okay. Right now, we're just trying to get a handle on the economy. What is it? What are the different pieces to it? Okay. And then we could study it, right? So for example, you could be working in the secondary sector and not be making as much money as someone working in the primary sector. Um, Even within sectors, the tertiary sector, I mentioned this a moment ago, you have people working with people in the sense of doctors or lawyers. They make more money than people that are working at the cash register at Starbucks. Okay. So you can look at this a couple of ways. You can look at it horizontally and look at it vertically, right? Okay. The next piece of this puzzle we're going to talk about is location. You can't talk about the economy without talking about it as a global economy. When you hear people talk about the local economy, there are pieces at the local level that really do matter. Labor, for example, how much money you make in a job. But there are different aspects of the economy that are beyond the local that affect the local. So, for example, if you work in retail, let's say you work at Target and you make $15 an hour, they make good pay at Target. Let's say you make $15 an hour working at the cash register. Well, where do the products that go on that shelf in Target come from? Okay. So that's when we start looking at different dimensions: local, regional, state, interstate, national, international. All these pieces to the puzzle matter. So, for example, a lot of products on the shelves at Target are made in China. Now, then, here's where it gets interesting, and I'm going to pull up my pen to kind of illustrate this. Let me choose a different color. I like blue. Let's do blue. So, let's say that coffee is grown in Mexico up here. Coffee is grown in Mexico, so it's produced in Mexico. So we have that connection. Grown in Mexico. It's farmed in Mexico. Yet it is processed and manufactured, uh, maybe also internationally. I have actually experience in studying coffee. That's why I'm kind of using this example. All right. That still may occur there, but it then goes and is distributed maybe in the United States. And so, yes, production oftentimes is synonymous with the primary sector. Distribution often synonymous with the secondary sector. Consumption often synonymous with the tertiary sector. I meant distribution secondary sector here. Consumption mostly synonymous with this. Consumption may be done of coffee through Starbucks, but maybe you buy it at the one on Frederick Street in Owensboro. So you can see where this starts to get a little bit complicated, okay? Distribution might also occur interstate. It also might be state. Also might be regional. Production may go through a international level. It could also go in a more uh, either a state or a local level. It just depends on the product that you're looking at. So this can really, you know, it could be a lot. And I think the point is that we can study this way, and that's how we do it. And I think it helps really provide a general focus, a framework for us to better understand the economy. Well, why does that matter? Well, when you think about social stratification, there are people that work in these different areas. They work in production, they work in distribution, and it may be working at the national, international, state, etc. The modern day civilization, much of what we do every day is tied to economic activity. So, in order for us to understand people, we can understand what kind of work that they do, what kind of economic environment do they have in their communities, in their state, in their country, and how does that impact how they live their lives. This also will be something when we get into the chapter on global stratification, we're going to look a lot at the global economy. And one way of understanding poverty in the world is understanding what a type of economic development do they have or not have. Okay, so setting the stage for that as well, a little bit later on down the road. I mentioned looking at money. I kind of want to, walk through this relatively quickly here. We're going to focus on money because becomes the medium of exchange. And early on in hunters and gatherers, and the reason why exchange is so important because it is the basis of how we interact. Interaction is an exchange. You communicate, you interact with people. And think about the economy as an extension of human relationships. That's how it started early on. Now, modern economy, when you get into the digital economy and that's you know relationships well advanced and taking on a life of its own, really. But the early economy occurred in the form of trade. I have this, I'll give it to you. You have something, give it to me in return of equal value. That's barter. And we did a lot of that in hunting and gathering groups. When we encountered other groups, we would trade things that we have for something they have because it had value. But they don't buy things at Walmart or buy things at Target. It's something that we make, and I'm reluctant to give something up if I make it and it's good for me. But if I can trade that in exchange for something else, where else am I going to get the product other than make it myself or get it from somebody else? Barter. Then we get into agricultural societies and again, the dawn of civilization. This really is where the economy starts. So now people are able to grow enough food, more than what they need, and they have extra left over. What do you do with that surplus? And that's where we start, trading things in a larger scale. We start living in communities. We also start to realize division of labor. So if we live in a community, not everybody has to grow the same product. I could grow corn, you could grow beans, you can make spears, and I'll make bowls for food. So we have a division of labor, a specialization of labor. You think about modern communities, what I offer in terms of economic activity is education. What you offer is what you offer where you work. And we have a complexity of economic activity going on again at the local, state, national, international level. Okay. A medium of exchange advancing beyond barter is money. Okay. We like to talk about deposit receipts. So in early villages, people had deposit receipts and it would be backed by what we call stored value. So I would issue you a leaf that had an inscription on it, and it represented how much food I had available in my hut, right? Extra leftover. So I'm asking you to give me some of your corn, and you come back to me. I'll give you this deposit receipt. You come back to me and exchange it out for what I have. Deposit receipts. Now, if people didn't honor those deposit receipts, they may get kicked out of the community or worse, right? But you think about the deposit receipt, what does it represent? Think about when you write a check. That represents stored value in the bank. So this idea of stored value banks that we have now extends back into agricultural societies. Notice here with currency and deposit receipts represent stored value. No more currency or deposit receipts could be issued in the amount of gold or silver or grain that I had. Okay. So again, that representation of the deposit receipt. We're starting to talk a little bit about now. We're talking a little bit about inflation. We'll get to that in just a second. Get into industrial societies. Again, this is just a couple hundred years old, not that long ago. Notice here, bartering becomes a thing of the past. Gold was replaced by paper currency, but paper was based on the gold standard, the amount of gold in Fort Knox. So the amount of gold that was in Fort Knox was how much money is being made and distributed in the United States. Gold was a standard of stored value, and it still is in some respects for the world. Gold, for whatever reason, was seen as an incredibly valuable commodity. I like to talk about this with students quite a bit. I mean, what is it about gold? It doesn't make us more water or make us more food, or it's just something that we have created in our culture that is so important, right? That's an interesting part of this that I like to think about. But moving on, in later industrial societies, now money that you see circulating now, I don't have any on me right now, but it's not based on the gold standard. What is it based on now? So if you think about it, some limitations of the gold standard are you can only have so much money as you have gold. Well, a problem with that is there's only so much gold, and it then becomes a substance of conflict where we try to get as much gold as we can at all cost. That's not sustainable over time, and our cultures have moved off of that. And so now, for example, in the United States, um, in general, prices increase if a government issues currency at a rate higher than the growth of its gross domestic product, or GDP. You may have heard of that. What is GDP? The total goods and services that a country produces. So now money is largely based, in part, it's based on gross domestic product. So who creates goods and services? We do. Think about that. Our economy is based upon our economic activity now. It's not only based on the amount of gold in Fort Knox. And as a matter of fact, that's kind of gone by the wayside, right? So governments that have a strong economy, that strong economy is you have a lot of people working. This is why you see reports in the news from time to time. What is the unemployment rate? Or what are the number of people looking for a job? Or what does the labor market look like? That's a very important part of our everyday lives because, well, for one, I need to work to make money to pay for the stuff that I have. It's not free, right? And we're also positioning ourselves in relation to other countries in the world, and that gets into the global economy. The strength of our economy, other countries look at the strength of our economy as it relates to what they can buy from us. Think about how important it is for China to have a strong economy, a strong labor force, because they produce so many of the products that we buy on our shelves in the United States. So this is why, economically speaking, at least, what other countries are doing are important to us. Sometimes we lose that. We want to just think about our own country and what we do. Well, part of what we do is based upon what people will buy from us elsewhere and what we buy from them. And this is why the relationships of our country with other countries is sometimes, a very important thing. Getting into more modern considerations, and we can talk about this in the form of credit cards and debit cards. You see those here. A check that you write is based upon the money in the bank. A debit card, when you swipe it, you better have that money in the bank because it's taken out instantly, digitally, right? Well, what are credit cards based on? Credit cards aren't based on stored value. Credit cards are based upon the possibility that you could pay this off in the future. Think about loans. What are loans based on? Your ability to pay it back, right? So when you get a home loan or a car loan, if you're younger, you can ask your parents about this. But when you get a home loan, there is usually, some research into your background to see if you have an education, to see your work history. Do you make enough money to be able to pay back this amount of money you're going to borrow for your home? And there's are some formulas that are in place before you get that loan, much like business loans are that way. And so much of our current work and what we're trying to do for our future growth is based upon whether or not we could get loans to do that now to help us grow our business and live in our homes into the future. So it's a lot of statistical formulas are used. You hear about this with the stock market, a lot of predictions and possibilities, and all of that is based upon the kinds of stuff that we're talking about here in terms of economic activity, types of economy that we have, types of economic practice, strength of production, of distribution, and so on. Okay. So I'm going to stop right there as that's part one of this. Um, Actually, before I stop there, let's see. Yeah, before I stop there, let's take a look at this. So, what kinds of major economic transformations in society have we seen, and why does that matter? Well, again, people live in society, and so the economic changes we have are going to affect the kind of work that people do. Some major changes in the agricultural society with the invention of the plow. There's that productive specialization. Permanent settlements are first communities. A lot of the early communities that were established were occurred during agricultural societies. And then in the industrial society, moves people off of the farm. Now remember here, people are farming, it's all that they do. They don't work at the cash register here. Okay. The Industrial Revolution moves people off the farm. They're still doing some of this work, but people are now starting to work in factories. And we see further specialization of labor, mass production. Um, the first salaried work is found in industrial societies. And then the information age, focusing on computers, a big part of work now is instead of having mechanical skills, do you have literacy skills? Do you know how to work on um, the machines? Not necessarily are you strong enough to make the machines work? Are you smart enough to keep it working for you? Right? Notice it says from factories to almost anywhere. I'm conducting this work that I'm doing right now. I've created this video from home. I'm employed by Owensboro Community and Technical College. The campus is way over there, but I'm employed just about everywhere I go. If I've got computers and mobile phones are a part of that. Culture changes, expectations of the type of work that you do changes, and a big challenge that we have in modern civilization is the ability to adapt. Okay, so I'm gonna stop right there. I'm gonna end this section here, and then we'll pick it up in the next video to follow. And yeah, so thank you for your attention again. See you soon.